Joining me again, we have the shirtless pundit, Zach Haller. How are you, Zach?
Hi, good. How are you, Jason?
I'm very well. Shirt on. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, still not quite warm, and I like this shirt. It's new, so here we go.
Now, Zach, we've got a very serious topic to discuss tonight. You've been on the show several times, and I always enjoy your insights and talking with you about the various things that you cover, whether it's tweeting about Bernie Sanders, being an activist, being a part-time journalist, your experience in the world of immigration. But you now have been the victim of this widespread social media censorship. Your very popular Medium page has been basically totally shut down. Can you tell us what happened?
Yeah. Thanks for bringing me on. So I have been writing, as most people know. I think a lot of people on your show have kind of been in our same like crossover Venn diagram audience of smart truth seekers. So I started writing when Medium was born. Basically, this website was brand new as a blogging platform right around the election, 2016. It was starting up. I was watching it. I was like, that's interesting. I'd love a blogging platform, so I was just tweeting. I was writing for Jordan Chariton at Truth Against the Machine and H.A. Goodman for Counter Propa. They were both posting, and then Progressive Army, they started posting my articles before that, like I had to say. And Medium was born at that time too, so that's probably like 2016, 2017. And so I published. Jordan Chariton at the Young Turks fired me from my volunteer job at the Young Turks because I asked questions that he didn't want the answer to, and I'm going to publish those messages in my book, and I can't wait.
Oh, nice.
Screenshot it. He like went off at me on a group chat. Done Facebook group chat in front of the entire Truth Against the Machine, all these brand new like independent journalists that were starting up with Jordan, and like he like made an example of me, and this was right when my own Medium was coming out, and I was getting shit ton views on my DNC fraud lawsuit stuff. Jordan didn't want to touch it, and he's like, that's a bad topic, no one's gonna read that. Then I post my 7 jaw-dropping things on Medium, it blows the internet. It was amazing, and like I got to watch all that front row seat, so I didn't get to explain it all to people, but anyway, so I started writing on Medium for two years ago, 55 articles, and I wrote one about QAnon, and I knew, and I'll explain it, but I knew that's part of why I have not touched QAnon. My content is completely parallel to QAnon content, and that's, to me, the point of it, but I have never wrote about it because I knew they are so hard on people who post about QAnon. It's the first thing that they use. All the social media, YouTube, Twitter, everything. Like people who are posting Q are always shadow banned. Accounts are deleted. People who post the best Q accounts, like Jordan Sather has had to reinvent his YouTube so many times because YouTube keeps shutting him down. Twitter accounts, people have to create 3rd, 4th, 5th accounts, because Q is the most censored topic on the internet. And so people who follow my writing pretty closely know that I write in parallel with Q for that specific reason since it began, but I never addressed that it's Q because that's a touch of, like, it's basically the kiss of death online. And so sure enough, I write an article, finally my first Q article, and I've been watching this thing since it started in October 2017. My first Q article is up for about a week, and then my entire Medium blog is permanently suspended. Sent me an email, completely template email from Barbara at Medium, just like, Zach, or no, it didn't even say Zach. It was like, dear user, the Medium account associated with this email address has been violated our trust and safety standards. The account is no longer publicly accessible. You can download all your content here.
But why, Barbara? Zach? I mean, I got to tell you, I've had my doubts about QAnon. I haven't been a QAnon follower, and I find it hard to imagine that somebody with that high level of security would be leaking this stuff, all the trust sessions and so many things that didn't work out. But that aside, my opinion of it doesn't matter. Why are you not allowed to blog about that? I mean, it could be Mary Had a Little Lamb if it's fiction or whatever. Why are you not allowed to write about that?
Exactly. And it's like, this is, what your work does, what my work does. A lot of this really like intrepid journalism is towing this line, like what the mainstream media, what big tech will even let exist online. And so much of what people are doing is, it's not necessarily doing it for the reaction, but the reactions to what people are writing and what people are posting is showing what the like big tech gods don't want. And obviously big tech was completely in the pocket of Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama through this whole thing. So it's like they have, God knows, maybe one day we'll see what real extensive intelligence these big tech companies have about knowing the depth of this corruption, because they're like, we need to make sure Fast and Furious isn't written about. We need to make sure Spygate isn't written about, Hillary's rigged primary, Libya, Benghazi. Like, there are so many things that the like big tech has been protecting for the Democrats all this time. You know, it's a massive operation at Google, at YouTube, at Twitter, at Facebook. They're all connected. They're all starting to take hits. Medium is owned by the Twitter, like it's basically under the Twitter umbrella. So I was actually surprised I was surprised, honestly, that I was even allowed to be on Medium for more than like 5 articles, because Twitter or Medium has always been owned by like the @EV, I forget his name, Evan something. He is a former Twitter founder. Basically, Medium is just Twitter's blogging platform. Which
well, people can still follow you
Medium's
on Twitter.
Totally
right? People can follow you. You're
still
there
follow me on
at
Twitter.
Zach Haller. People can go right on there. And I never understand how this works, that you have shirtless pundit and your name, but I'm not a real Twitter expert, but people can definitely follow you there. You can't do the same kind of long format writing that you were so good at. So it's really taken away your voice. We got some kind of sound issue happening.
Can you hear me okay. Right? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I can hear you okay. There's a little variation, but
okay.
Yeah.
So what will you do now?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter in the meantime. So it's auspicious timing, because I'm actually finishing a book right now. And so I was putting a compilation together of all my essays. I will probably include about 40. I've written 55 in the past 2 years. And basically I'm going through and kind of like giving the story of like how all of a sudden my writing became accessible on the internet. And like people don't necessarily like, think they care or realize, but I was just a person trying to write as like originally a Bernie Sanders person that was up against the neoliberals from the left. And then when all of a sudden the neoliberals basically were constantly silencing their, opponents from both the right and the left, all of a sudden I became kind of, it's like the new right and like true left, like the libertarian bond that unites those groups, so to speak. I kind of just like rose into that, and I wrote for Jordan Sheridan, and I wrote with H.A. Goodman, and then I did my Medium blog, and literally almost every single one of my articles tells some story about where I published it, who was okay with publishing it. And then, for example, Progressive Army, which turned out to be a big Soros front group, Progressive Army liked me at first. They invited me to write. And then as I was writing with them, the Progressive Army people started attacking me on other platforms with Noah Changa, Benjamin Dixon. There was all of this infighting happening on the left as it was kind of the fallout right when Trump was elected, all of the like Hillary people blaming Bernie people, etc. I was still writing from the left and being outcasted. So most of my essays, the biggest ones, tell a story in why they were popular, why they made a big splash. And a lot of it was because of the political nature of what I was writing, what an independent journalist was saying at the time, what platform it was, what is the true, little old me, obviously had no expectation of how many people would ever read my stuff, but my viewpoint was I need to go right up against Hillary Clinton. I need to look her in the eye and just say, this is how I write. It's like, I'm not pretending to be afraid of any of these public servants that think that it's okay for them to completely abuse the public office. Yeah. And so I just wrote from that perspective. And obviously, mainstream media and big tech is just a filter for what speech is okay at this point in this country. And so I don't know what I'm doing with my blog next. I'm actually hoping Medium restores my blog, because I would like it to be back how it was, and for it to be, what's the term, time immemorial, for it to be existent.
Well, you still have the writing backed up, right? You have the articles.
I have the articles. They sent me a zip. They were like, please download a zip file of everything you posted. I'm like, thank you. And it's in HTML, so it's like formatted. So they didn't like totally screw me over, which is why I'm not really freaking out about this. So yeah, so I'm about to finish my book. Hopefully it'll be done by Memorial Day is my goal. And so I'll release my book and basically say, hey, everybody, so these actually used to be on the internet, but they all were scrubbed. So deduce what you will about these essays.
Well, it kind of makes the
Yeah.
book more exciting, possibly. It's so surprising to me that a QAnon article would be the thing that gets you taken down because, you know, when you've been on the show in the past, Zach, it's always been when you've written some article that catches my eye about stuff like, you know, we've been talking about Spygate, and, you know, here we've got Obama and the perpetually expanding Spygate. We've got the catch-22s of Trump-Russia collusion 6 months ago when they were in full swing, the FISA memo. I mean, it feels like you're touching on some real seriously scandalous stuff, and then QAnon, which they could easily dismiss as, you know, whatever they want to call it, that's what gets you knocked out. It's a little surprising.
It is. And, you know, QAnon was in the title, but the article, if you or anyone has read it, is basically about the CIA's influence in media. And I like to use like subtleties in like the writing that I use, but people will realize when you're reading this that the point of this article is like, look, there is this overarching ethical dilemma of the CIA's influence in media. And if we're talking about bias, we need to know what conflicts of interest exist. And the CIA is basically just like specifically being like, so we want to control media, but we need to make sure no one knows that we want to control media. So it's this real, obviously, like, you know, 1984 Ministry of Truth. Like, it's very, like, the topic is basically like the censorship and like the filtering of the truth as tried to be controlled by the CIA and Washington Post. So, you know, it's like I could have, in the CIA, Washington Post, Bezos, there's a lot of things that could have made that article a problem. Also, it might not actually have had anything to do with QAnon. This is a completely legitimate theory, is that, so I think it also totally possibly could have been because the Mueller probe was about to come out. And my blog has so many articles documenting everything the entire way. It's like there are a handful of journalists who have been legitimately reporting on the truth the whole time. You know, Sean Hannity's show, for example, you know, Laura Ingraham. There's a handful of mainstream people that did kind of stick with the Republican Trump party and get it right for the most part. From the left, though, basically no one. And my blog had so many articles from the Democrats, DNC fraud lawsuit, to Spygate, to FISA, everything. I feel like they were just like, we don't want any of this on the internet because after the Mueller probe comes out, it's going to be obvious that this information has been available the entire time.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like they don't even want any of the articles on the internet. So it's like I don't like it. It did kind of, you know, because of the Q and how much of people like are specifically censored because of Q. Obviously, that is a total possible reason it triggered my suspension. However, that is kind of the interesting ambiguity of this, is because it happened right when the Mueller probe was about to come out. And it was like, or maybe they were just like, oh, so we don't want Zach's article about the Mueller probe to ever be published. They don't want me to go on there and be like, hey, so if you've read this blog, you've read that I've been saying this the entire time, like any normal American just watching the news and calling bullshit when they see it. So there's a couple reasons I think they wanted my account off, and it's just Medium people. So, you know, there is also a...
I'm glad we're having this conversation, though, because as we talk, it seems to me way more likely that the stuff that you're talking about with the CIA controlling information is more sensitive to who doesn't want it up there than QAnon, because you know, QAnon has been around for a while, and it's
exactly.
I mean, you know, there are people that I like and respect who do follow QAnon, so I don't want to insult it, but I'm just saying it's a thing that's easy for the mainstream to dismiss, whereas talking about the CIA controlling the Washington Post or whatever, that's way more palatable for the general public, and it's true, so it's like a problem.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you know, I like the ambiguity that it could have been for all these different reasons, and you know, the QAnon community on the internet is so powerful and like so engaged with everything that's going on that it did benefit me to, you know, basically suss out the consideration that this was triggered by QAnon. I obviously don't know. There's also people who think, Zach, maybe this is Patriots in control. Maybe this was actually done for the optics of just showing what type of censorship we're seeing by people that didn't want to censor my voice, but they just know this is so common in big tech. Like, you know, it could have been done by in good faith, because the response to my blog getting suspended like means so much that like it gives my book that's about to come out more meaning.
Yeah.
And it honestly, I've got so much more attention, and so many people who are now like found out about me only because my account was suspended, and they're like, oh wait, what's the story? And then when they look into it, they're like, wow, this is scary to begin with, but also significant, because, you know, they're really targeting citizen journalists in every possible way.
Totally.
And that's why I write too. It's like video, it's so much easier for them to shut down on YouTube, and that's why I never committed to doing a video anything. It's like it's too much extra work and it's too easy to censor. Writing is the easiest to distribute, so that's going to be my focus. And I'm one of the few people that actually writes like contrarian information on the internet. Honestly, it's like I wish there were more, but it's like the biggest platforms are for people who are working for big news media, and big news media isn't going to call themselves out. And no local, all these like local, you know, it's like Seattle Times, it's like all these local newspapers, it's just like they're still just like casually conservative, and they're going to be reactive to everything. So there's really not many citizen journalists actually writing about what's going on. So it makes sense that they wanted my blog off the internet for many reasons.
And you were telling us, of course, how you kind of got your start going with the Young Turks and everything like that. So have you seen this video from Mr. Reagan about the brains behind AOC? Because he has revealed that the Young Turks played a major role in starting the Justice Democrats, and that Cenk Uygur is, you know, just the fact that he's named it the Young Turks, it's based on this whole movement from Turkey. You really should watch the video if you haven't seen it. It's over 2 million views right now, and I had Mr. Reagan on the show about a week ago. This video is exploding, as is his channel, but I think you're going to get a lot out of this, because again, as we're talking, it sounds to me like you have been kind of identified as someone who is very insightful, someone who writes and speaks in a way that really reaches people, and are just touching on so many hot button topics that perhaps, you know, some of these people that you've mentioned were sort of sent your way to take you out.
Funny you mention that, Jason, because guess what? It's a common theme in my 2 to 3 year career as an online internet journalist that pisses off all the people that I mean to be pissing off.
Yeah. And you and I started around the same time. It was the 2016 election that got everything started. And I think that there were sort of systems in place to, obviously you look at somebody like Sean Hannity, he's paid, you know, whatever, 20 million bucks a year. And when they say, hey, guess what? You're going to sit there next to Donna Brazile. That's how he's controlled. He's got some kind of contract and tons of money on the line. And, you know, if it were me, I would have said, you know what, Donna Brazile should be in jail for actual election tampering. And Fox News, you better decide between me or her. But whatever, I can't speak for him. You and I are way more difficult to control.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. And that's part of what I'm going to be sussing out in my book. And I'm so glad that I haven't watched that video yet, but I've basically known that AOC is this whole fraud this entire time. So it's not surprising to me, and I don't find her worth a lot of my breath or energy for many reasons. However, as you may know, back when kind of right after the election, when people were in the independent community were trying to figure out how to do new stuff, I was doing a few shows with Hard Bastard, who does videos, great work. I don't know what he's up to too much lately, but I would go on his show, and one of our topics that we were working on was this whole Justice Democrats like situation. Basically, obviously, this was kind of the commandeered part of the progressive Democratic Party in many ways, it was just completely controlled opposition, like Bernie was. It's like they want to find the people that don't like Hillary from the left and keep them at bay, because if they're not at bay, then they're going to be obviously causing an issue situation. And this is completely speculation, but it's just like when Jordan from the Young Turks, and obviously we watched the Young Turks, and they were like pro Bernie at first, but then immediately were like, oh, Hillary's fine, and then went with the whole Russia thing. And so we saw that. But we also saw Jordan Chariton talking to Donna Brazile and actually being one of the very few people who actually like looked the criminal in the eye and was like, how are you not being arrested right now by a police officer walking in the room right now? Because everyone knows point blank how big of a crime you committed. And how can anyone look at you and talk to you like Tim Black when that interview, and he was like, oh, so what happened? It's like, this is the person who's responsible for the deaths of, like, you know, it's like the DNC is a criminal enterprise. Absolutely. And it's like, if you're like bunning up on them, it's like, this is corrupt, you know, like it's all a swamp. If you're in that swamp and you're not calling it out, that exposes your side.
So what's the name of the book going to be?
Must Reads, Essays for a New Paradigm of Truth is the name of it. I think that like it's just kind of what I've always used, and no one said anything. So I want it to be must read. It's got a big hashtag across the top. But yeah, so that's kind of the theme. And yeah, it's going to be probably 30 to 40 essays and a lot of, I'm trying to decide exactly if I want to do more of a first person account or if I want to make that as objective as possible. Like a girl has no face and just be like, nope, I'm the no one. So I'm trying to figure out what the kind of story will be, tying all of it together. But basically, it might be the first. Hopefully, I keep writing and I do many volumes of this book, and then, you know, like 10 years from now, I'm just like, okay, I'm writing as I go, and this is what you see, and this is the reaction voice a year or two later. So it's going to be called Must Reads, and it should be hopefully out by Memorial Day is the goal.
And then, of course, people will be able to get it on Amazon and other retailers not controlled by the CIA.
Exactly. It's like I'm literally getting it ready to be an Amazon ebook, knowing I have to do another alternative. But
yeah,
I'll diversify.
We've got a lot of people in the comments right now, Zach, who are saying they can totally relate to you because they were on board for Bernie, but now it's not, you know, Bernie's coming back for 2020. It's kind of feels a little bit like getting back together with the ex. Not such a good idea.
I mean, it's really, it's not a good idea. Bernie is even more, I have two essays that I'm trying to finish this book, and one is called Hell Hath No Fury Like a Burner Scorned, because like that is my story basically. It's like Bernie, I was ready to be mad at the neoliberals, and Bernie made it feel like we were actually going to be able to do that, and then Bernie was like, oh, BTW, I'm working for the neoliberals. And I obviously didn't take that laying down, so like that's a story I'm going to write for that essay. But I don't even honestly understand how anyone can be in the mentality that a Democrat is an option at this point. Most of the people that I interact with are either apolitical or are just like, well, good luck with the Democrats. It's such a clown show already. I'm like, can't wait for 2020 just to watch Trump just destroy all of these cons.
He was so strong tonight in that rally in Michigan. If the election were tomorrow, I think it might be a historic landslide. People are asking how they can follow you, Zach, and right now it would seem that Twitter is probably the best way. He's on there at Zach Haller. People can see the address right there. Easy to find him. Now, Zach, I noticed that you're still blogging a little bit. I see you've got a post here on steamit.com. What's going on with that?
Well, so I created an account when it got started with Gab, trying to diversify, but also it's like we need to be on Twitter still. So I created a Steemit account, and they don't take posts down to my knowledge. And so it's basically been the only kind of like simplistic writing platform that I've been able to kind of use to substitute my Medium articles. I'm trying to get as many up there so people can read them. I put the Q article that got censored on there right away, and that had a great response. But I don't really know about Steemit, and I'm hoping that through enough coercion, Medium will restore my account and I can go back to that because I really like the aesthetic of it, the simplicity of it, and I think that it was just much more accessible of a format. Steam It. It's kind of more like it's not pretty to read. The formatting is in HTML, so I have to do like light coding as I'm going through, and it's a chore, and I can't like embed links or videos and things like that. So Steemit's not my favorite, and I don't know a whole lot about it, but that's
Well,
where I am posting some stuff now.
yeah, I mean, it's not my favorite either. I was looking into Steam it quite a bit in 2018, and I saw quite a bit of evidence that indicated to me that maybe not the whole entire company, but at very least there is a large faction of individuals who are utilizing it for what I believe is a Ponzi scheme and a money laundering scheme. We had seen some Discord posts instructing people how to use some software tools to upvote their own posts and game the system to increase the amount of Steam dollars they were using, how to move that currency out of Steam it into Litecoin, then into a mainstream type of cryptocurrency exchange into Bitcoin, and then into dollars, which read like an instruction manual for money laundering to me. Plus, it advertises itself as this uncensorable platform. However, if the people that I'm talking about decide that they don't like you, they can downvote your stuff into oblivion and then nobody sees it. So it really feels like a censorable platform that's just controlled by these guys who are doing guys and girls who are doing this hard sell to get people on there.
Yeah, and I haven't dug too deep into it, but that totally seems completely legitimate. That's part of why I have not invested much time in it. I basically just kind of mirrored a lot of my articles on there now and again because it does seem a little bit more resistant to censorship. Now, Susie Dawson of WikiLeaks, of the WikiLeaks family, Susie Dawson was tweeting me for a period of time, and it was this weird period of time when all of a sudden all these Julian Assange cultists came out with just this belligerent need to concern troll people on Twitter if they care enough about Julian Assange or not, which was fishy to begin with to me. But then Susie Dawson was writing me on Twitter and she was like, your post will go so much more further on Medium. You should really, on Steam It. You should really look into Steam It. And
Now, who is this person? I've never heard of her before.
Susie Dawson. So Suzie, 3D, I think is her name. She's either from Australia or New Zealand. She's kind of in the Kim.com umbrella of Down Under. She's done a lot. I don't know a lot about her, but I've seen a decent amount of good work. But she's kind of fallen into the umbrella with Caitlin Johnstone and Elizabeth DeVos, who may do good work once in a while, but they just have these, again, it's like the Julian Assange cultists that are selectively concerned about freedom of the press and seem very, very biased toward WikiLeaks, which is, I'm all about whistleblowers and whistleblower groups and things like that, but WikiLeaks is not the same entity that it was before the election. A lot has happened. And to just blindly shame people into needing to support WikiLeaks or support Julian Assange mindlessly, it's just always why are you telling me that? If I draw my own conclusions and I respect someone or respect a group, I know that. And so Steam It, it was a suggestion.
So she was giving you the hard sell on Steam It as well, huh?
I mean, it wasn't a pitch. It wasn't an overt it didn't. I have definitely been contacted by Democratic Party representatives and told to quiet down. So that is a totally different thing. Susie, we were just chatting, and she had mentioned that Steam It was a good platform and that I would get more visibility. And there, you can make money off the posts. Apparently, I completely agree with you. And just my cursory review of Steam It, I'm this looks just like it is a recipe for disaster in terms of what is actual money, what is internet money, and what is Bitcoin. It's we're just going to tell you what it is now. Obviously, I have no idea what it is. So in 2 years, I can change it and get money. So I haven't spent a penny on it. I haven't cashed anything out. So I don't really care about the financial element. It just seems a little bit more anchored down to the internet as my blog is down. And I really don't want, I really hope my blog can pretty in a year or 2 or 3. Like, those articles went up when they did, and they're not perfect, but part of what it is saying it when we were seeing it. And there will be no way to replace those articles on the internet in a way that like actually legitimately justifies what I was saying was it. And I can reprint them and people can read them and see and watch the timeline. But there's journalism is it's like the 5D chess that the whole world is playing. It's like not only is journalism like the content, but it's also when it's being said and how it's being said and the platform it's being said on. With all the media corruption, obviously it's a huge.
Let me share something crazy with you for a second. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Zach, but in addition to the interference I'm having with your call, can people hear that? There's an iPad in the other room here that just turned itself on. I'm not sure how that could possibly happen. That's never, ever, ever happened before. An iPad just started playing. Whoops.
I mean, don't even ask me. My Instagram is so creepy now. It's like if I say one thing, and then immediately I get 10 ads about it, which is okay now that Game of Thrones is coming up, because I'm like, okay, I'll take those. I was actually about to, I don't know if you watch Game of Thrones, but I was actually about to write a column on Game of Thrones on my Medium blog just for fun. For this just like a column, and I may find a place to do that, but it's it's big media. I don't really
I'm always very reluctant though to jump to the conclusion that, I mean, we know that when you're talking about Google, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, we click on an I accept terms of service thing that includes somewhere in there a statement about they're going to listen to what you're saying and send you ads. But I don't understand how that iPad just suddenly turned on by itself and started playing a video. I mean, everybody observed that it was sitting over there off for a half an hour, and I'm sitting here, and there's nobody else in the apartment. That's weird.
That's weird. Yeah.
So Young Turks, you're not
really...
that's
sometimes like the...
Sorry, go on.
Oh yeah, I'm like, is our poor connection because we're talking about my CIA article? It's like, that's part of why I haven't been able to do video or lives either. It's like, I always like somehow manage to only have a bad connection when I'm like trying to do lives. And it's like, these big tech platforms know how to just like make your platform, give it problems and make it look like it's not, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't have any relationship with the Young Turks. I just... After the election, Jordan Chariton, who was the only person on the Young Turks that actually looked like he was trying to get to the bottom of the Democratic fraud, he launched his little Truth Against the Machine blog, which is hilarious. And I honestly don't feel comfortable writing about it, so maybe we'll just come on and I'll have more shows talking about it. Allow me to be a double conspiracy theorist right now. When the Young Turks and how compromised Cenk Uygur is, and like to me, it's like when I see a CIA person, I'm just like CIA person, like in the Washington Post article that got me kicked off. When I watched that video of those Washington Post people, Washington Post girl, and then a guy from George Washington University, it's like spies.
We're getting some hard interference right now, Zach. It's really unbelievable. And it's, when we started talking about Suzy Q 3D and all that sort of stuff and the Steam It stuff, I don't think Siri turned on that iPad. People have some ideas about it. Wasn't even talking. You were talking when it turned on, and the iPad can't hear you.
Yeah, I don't know. Can you hear what I'm saying, though? Am I breaking up? Because my internet is
it's good.
pretty good.
Right.
So I don't think it should be me. But yeah, I did when I started writing for the Truth Against the Machine, this free blogging platform after the election that Jordan Chariton created with his buddy Cenk Uygur. I very, very much was I applied to write for Truth Against the Machine, right? And I'm just like, just trying to get my writing out. I don't even care. Just like, who will publish me? I'll find out. That's interesting enough. So I applied to write for Jordan Sheraton. I got accepted as one of the first people on this like short-lived blog. But basically, to me, what happened was Jordan was like sending these emails, and this was this group of independent journalists that were like writing stuff. And Jordan will say, okay, tell me what you're writing about. It's like, oh, what are you guys going to write about topic-wise? And I'm just like, I might be being paranoid, but I'm pretty sure this is exactly what the CIA would want to do, is they would want to try and get all of the emerging independent journalists in one place and be able to watch what they're doing and be able to control what they're saying.
Yes.
And I was like, I don't, it's, a lot of people don't think about this maybe necessarily, but in my own curiosity, I'm like, so I know the CIA is active right now. What do I do? What are they doing? What are they doing? They're probably doing it well. So I'm probably, as an average person, seeing it. And so I'm like, oh, so if I were the CIA, what would I want to do? Oh, I would want to like be able to be in charge of all the independent journalists in the United States to make sure that they're not saying what we don't want them to say. How would they do that? They would do something just like Jordan Sheraton did for Cenk Uygur right after the election. And when I got kicked out and all of my content I was like, well, at least H.A. Goodman's still publishing my writing, because I obviously can only speculate, but
is H.A. still publishing your stuff CIA now?
Involvement. Great question. So H.A. he doesn't have Counterpropa anymore, the website that he was publishing my stuff on. And as many people know, H.A. was very big writing and doing videos during the pro-Bernie Sanders. And then, like most logical media, Bernie got screwed by Hillary, so we're obviously voting for anyone but Hillary, so I guess that means it's Trump. So H.A. told me he would publish anything I wrote. Literally, he would say that over and over, and it was like music to my ears. It was like the most amazing experience to like have emerged from the depths of the internet and all of a sudden been getting published on the thing after the election. And the only other person he was publishing was Kaylin Johnstone. And we were both publishing on HA's website. HA was publishing, and the three of us were on Counterpropa for a short period of time. Mm-hmm. And then, all of a sudden, and this does make sense, HA was having trouble with Counterpropa. People were hacking this website, and it was coming down. And that
hacking
is
it, you
totally
said?
Possible, because obviously hacking it, or like, just basically like DNS attacks, trying to take their websites down. And that would make perfect sense that Hillary's campaign and like the David Brock, George Soros media tentacles would not want H.A. Goodman to have an independent platform after the 2016 election. Makes sense. Mm-hmm. But H.A. he and I used to talk pretty regularly on the phone, and all website went down, where that was where my secret actually got the most exposure. It had like in like 450,000 shares on Facebook only in like 1 week. It was totally insane. And a Counterpropa link to that. I'd be able to go up on Medium too, but it was first posted on Counterpropa because Jordan Sheraton had just fired me because he didn't think that people cared about that. And then I was like, well, I'm going to find someone else that publishes it. And then it blew up. So interesting. But H.A. eventually told me, oh yeah, I just can't. Sorry, buddy. My website's just down. It's not worth fixing anymore.
What?
Mm-hmm. So my three places that I've written are Truth Against the Machine for Jordan right after the election, Counterpropa for H.A. Goodman also right after the election, and then I started my own Medium blog because I knew that I wouldn't necessarily last anywhere. And then I was off Truth Against the Machine, and then I was off Counterpropa, and then now I'm off Medium.
It's crazy, Zach. There's a lot of
commenters. Must be good stuff I'm writing. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're hitting on some sensitive topics, and I think what you said about what you're basically describing is a honeypot operation where they set up some, as you said, independent journalist blogs, some sort of thing like Steam It, where they want to attract everybody who's feeling kind of disenfranchised, everybody who's getting blocked on Twitter, blocked on Medium, blocked on YouTube, whatever it might be, and corral everybody into one thing, and then they can, crush that thing or control that thing or downvote your stuff. I mean, my Steam It page is a perfect example of how that allegedly censorship-proof platform can work if in fact they do want to censor you. I mean, if everything I say about it is wrong, it's a proven fact that they can control your content on there if they want to. And the same people that are doing that are connected to this lawsuit that was brought, strangely enough, by an ex-CIA agent, Robert David Steele. Now, I wanted to ask you, that brings to mind something I've been talking about quite a bit lately, which is this Devin Nunes lawsuit against Twitter. I know you were following Devin Nunes quite a bit because he was doing a lot of stuff with Pfizer. And yes, we all do like and appreciate Devin Nunes. He was a champion of President Trump. He's a young guy there in Congress, has got a bright political future ahead of him, particularly for conservatives who like what he's doing, and he's kind of like, he got a lot of appeal, right? He was a dairy farmer, so, middle America can relate to that and all kinds of things. But he's brought this lawsuit against Twitter that makes very little sense in terms of how he's doing it. Like, why would a sitting congressman bring a civil lawsuit that anyone like you or I could, rather than proposing legislation that would modernize the CDA 230 and make it so that people like you and I would be protected from these, vast billionaire-owned social media companies. That's what we want Congress for, not to go launching their own personal civil lawsuits for $250 million so that they can profit. And the thing about it is, Devin Nunes is using the same lawyer as the CIA agent who's suing me. And this is a lawyer who has been sanctioned by the Virginia bar, lost his law license for a year, but continued practicing law and was sanctioned again. The guy operates with impunity, almost as if he has no fear of repercussions. What do you think about that Devin Nunes lawsuit, Zach?
It is a very loaded issue, and it's interesting, obviously, different angles, and I'm glad that you enlightened me to the crossover on your side on that. Now, I totally agree with you that it's very interesting what Devin Nunes is doing as a sitting congressperson. I love him, period, especially conservative from California. Great. Now, I think that he is part of a broader coalition of a lot of people who know that a lot of people, every one of us in a way, has different things that they can do at different times to help fight against the swamp, basically. And I think that it was kind of clear to me at the same time, well, you saw Ben Carson's lawsuit against Facebook today. You saw Devin Nunes' lawsuit. You saw
Ben
the Covington
Carson,
kids lawsuit. Do you see all these?
The brain surgeon has a lawsuit against Facebook?
The brain surgeon has a lawsuit against Facebook. Very interesting lawsuit through the Housing and Urban Development Department.
Huh.
And they are finding very creative ways. And I think that Trump is part of what I think is very genius about the Trump operation, the Trump regime, if you will, the admin, is they know that the judicial branch of the government is arguably more powerful than the legislative branch. And so they know that not only to advance their own personal interests through lawsuits, they need to advance government interests through lawsuits as well. There's a lot of things up in terms of the judicial branch that needs to be.
Hey, Zach, let me ask you this.
Sussed
Zach,
out to these things.
Sorry. Try killing the video and maybe we can conserve bandwidth and people will be able to hear you better because you're really breaking up.
Okay. Oh, what a coincidence. I'll kill the video.
Sorry about that. Let's try that.
No problem. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sure.
Please continue.
Sure. So I think that these lawsuits are a very important part of what's going on right now. And I think that Trump as an individual, the way his freedom of speech is as an individual, is being infringed upon through Twitter censorship of Trump, shadow banning Devin Nunes. I think a lot of these people do make sense to be the lead plaintiffs in judicial action that could have more productive results and faster results than any legislative work. Also, Trump has been stacking the courts in a very smart way, and he has to undo a lot because Obama's administration also stacked the courts in a very bad way. But I think Trump is acting in general in good faith. And so there are going to be a lot of really important legal battles that get sussed out in all these different circuit courts. And there's real strategy to all of a sudden the Covington kid, right, with the MAGA hat at the, with Indian, right. Nathan, that whole drama, that lawsuit is absolutely massive. Devin Nunes, absolutely massive lawsuit. There are going to
well, let me pause you there, though. Let me pause you there. Because
Sure.
the Devin Nunes lawsuit is
Sure.
for a massive amount of money, but almost every
Sure.
legal pundit on both sides of the political fence have said that it has virtually no chance of surviving because the Communications Decency Act, Section 230, grants just an incredible indemnity to the social media companies, protection from being sued for things posted Sure. by users. And this has been a barricade for, coming up on 23 years here. What we really need Congress and the government to do is modernize this so that people can succeed in lawsuits, because basically any lawsuit, whether it's Devin Nunes or whoever, Donald Trump himself, is not going to be able to overcome this barrier. And so it's very difficult to understand why Devin Nunes, I gotta have to look into this Ben Carson lawsuit. I was unaware of that. I wonder who his lawyer is. But
yeah, and the legal industry is a completely bizarre world that a lot of people have no idea how much real power it has and how much of, honestly, and hard bastard, when we were talking about Justice Democrats, we were talking about these big conflicts of interest, and something that you obviously are completely privy to is what is the underlying connection between all of these different criminal enterprises? And unfortunately, in many ways, it is the law firms that protect them. And obviously, like, scandals come and go for politicians, for individuals, but the legal apparatus at these different law firms that protect them, and these same lawyers and these same judges, like, the whole legal landscape and the court landscape is an entire world that most people see very little of. Many court cases obviously are completely hidden from the private, or hidden from the public. And I will look into more now the kind of the politics around Devin Nunes's lawsuit in general, from my kind of, I'm working on what I'm doing. And when I see a type of lawsuit like that, in my opinion, the general consensus is, please, yes, absolutely, God, yes, force those lawsuits, because if they get accepted by the court, there's a legitimate claim to some extent, and we will see what happens to that lawsuit. Obviously, the DNC fraud lawsuit that Jared and Elizabeth filed, people had their criticisms about how they presented their lawsuit. Now, it really didn't, to some extent it didn't matter, because Jared and Elizabeth got to the point where they had oral arguments, a motion to dismiss. All of these plays that you see are political plays. There's court records of all of this to some extent. And even if you're just doing this to draw lines in the sand, or to win where you can win, or to put on court record incriminating information that might cross over into another lawsuit that's going on at the same time, you can introduce evidence to the court using lawsuits that have a legitimate premise. So obviously a lot of courts are corrupt, and those are taken advantage of. Lawyers are corrupt as well. But there's it's just kind of this like...
Let me interject here for a minute, because I'm looking at I had seen a headline about this, but I did not delve into it until just now. And obviously I've just read the heading of it. So there's an important difference between this lawsuit against Facebook and the lawsuit that Devin Nunes has brought in his personal capacity, just as a citizen, against Twitter, Elizabeth Mayer, and two fictional personas, Twitter accounts, parody Twitter accounts. So this is actually being brought on behalf of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and it is not targeting users or specific posts on Facebook. This is targeting the business practices of Facebook in how it sells advertising and how those ads are disseminated. They're alleging that there is racial discrimination because Facebook allows the advertiser to target people by certain demographics that they say it's unlawful to discriminate against any person in the terms, conditions, or privileges of the sale or renting of a dwelling. So this is totally different. Devin Nunes is bringing a defamation lawsuit naming Twitter as complicit in the defamation, which they are absolutely and definitely indemnified from by that CDA 230. This has nothing to do with user-generated posts on Facebook. This has to do with suing the Facebook Corporation for its discriminatory advertising and business practices. Now, this is also not being brought by Ben Carson personally, with Ben Carson being the recipient of any funds that would be extracted from Facebook. It's to get Facebook to stop violating these laws. This is the type of lawsuit that government agencies are supposed to bring, because this is going to benefit every American citizen who is a user of Facebook that does not want to be discriminated against by their advertising policies. So this is a good conversation that we're having, because I do believe that in part, whoever it is that's behind this lawsuit for Twitter, and I do share your positive feelings about Devin Nunes. I think he's done a lot of good things. I don't think this is something that he's done with the intention of having the lawsuit fail. My personal feeling is someone has coerced Nunes or deceived Nunes into thinking, as you've just said, that his lawsuit will make a difference, but multiple legal experts have suggested that the lawsuit that Devin Nunes has brought actually has the potential to damage people's abilities to prevail in these types of suits. This suit brought by the Department of Housing and Urban Development is very interesting, and I think will give Facebook a substantial challenge in court. I'll speak to some of our friends in the legal community about this and see what they think, but thank you for bringing this to my attention, Zach.
Well, and thank you for your very, very, very crisp analysis of all of these nuances with litigation, because obviously all of these parties and all of this is super, super, super important. And maybe I erred on the side of glossing over it. I was basically just kind of making the comment that there need to be battles fought in the court.
Yes.
And obviously parties completely vary, and I maybe didn't answer exactly what you were asking about Devin Nunes.
I think what you said was extremely important, and actually extremely important for the point that we're both trying to make. See, the Devin Nunes lawsuit appeals to people who like Devin Nunes, so they want to support it. And when I've been questioning the lawsuit, I'm doing it because my fear is it will damage Devin Nunes. He's already been made to look pretty ridiculous in the press. All these articles about the lawsuit are talking about Devin Nunes having a cow, the fictional Devin Nunes cow parody account has now exceeded Devin Nunes in followers, which is obviously not the desired result that the congressman wanted.
Well, but is that real followers? Sure. So totally. And it's great that we're talking about this, because all of these things, there's a lot of important things that are going on here. Now, Devin Nunes, one of the things that I think is very important that people start to really come to grips with, and that I think that the Justice Department of this country, if they want to get their act together and actually seem legitimate, is they need to legitimately protect Congress people, and they need to legitimately protect the President of the United States. And both Donald Trump and Devin Nunes have been the subjects of unprecedented attacks from the corrupt, crooked press, because there are two people that are actually legitimately doing things that are obviously, derogatory exposure for the deep state. So it's a completely legitimate and completely good cynicism to have, to look at a lawsuit and say, look, this can set us back. Because again, every lawsuit can absolutely set people back. Now, there's typically always an appeal process that's an option, and also there typically also are benefits of getting certain things on the record, because even if you don't win what you're fighting for in that moment, you may be able to win in some other way. Precedents, emerge in different ways. I do legitimately think that there is an unprecedented assault against conservative thinkers in this country, and I think that extends into Congress. Obviously, there was the Steve Scalise assassination attempt. Devin Nunes is the absolute target of so much disinformation that, whether he's approaching this the right way or not, I don't know.
Well, you've just said something very
poignant,
poignant,
I think that
Zach.
Congress people should...
You've just said something very important, and as a matter of fact, just in the course of our conversation and looking at this article from the Washington Post that I hadn't looked at before, I think we might be closing in on what is going on with this lawsuit. I think the lawsuit itself may be a deep state attack on Devin Nunes. The author of this Washington Post article is saying that Jonathan Chait at New York Magazine calls this bonkers, and the Post's Aaron Blake sees ridiculousness in the lawsuit, particularly given Nunes's co-sponsorship of a bill called the Discouraging Frivolous Lawsuits Act. Now, that's a very important sounding bill, because we don't want frivolous lawsuits. They're going to tie up the courts. They're going to make the wheels of justice grind to a halt. And the very individual that is representing Devin Nunes here is responsible for an alarming number of frivolous lawsuits. So it's possible that this lawsuit against Twitter on behalf of Devin Nunes is specifically intended to damage Nunes's reputation, damage this Discouraging Frivolous Lawsuits Act, which is not a lawsuit, but a proposed bill that would change the way laws in the United States work and might help us. This is amazing. We're getting in here and figuring out a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and there are so many moving parts to these types of things, and that's, this is exactly why I like your show in general. It's just like, people need to be comfortable working through these types of considerations, and it's like there are so many pros and cons to so many things, and it's like ultimately, we will see. There's a lot more to these lawsuits that meets the eye. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there will be a lot more to the outcomes of these lawsuits that meet the eye, but I do think that Devin Nunes, of all people, among some others, has more legal standing than many other Congress people in terms of people who have had to deal with reputational damage from blatant lies from the press and all of the people associated with the press machine that lies on behalf of Clinton and Obama. Yeah. And,
well, he's certainly been a target because of his support for the president. And I think it's really important, Zach, because so much of what you write about is the deceptive nature of the media, the clandestine agencies, and of course, everything you've been telling us in this interview has to do with your endeavors, which are, kind of parallel to mine in terms of the time frame, your endeavors into the world of independent media. And see, the thing that's so interesting about what we're all doing here in this world of independent media is that you're not going to have a 1-hour conversation on Rachel Maddow or Sean Hannity where you dig into these things and learn stuff. They're going to give you a 90-second clip about Devin Nunes's lawsuit, and or maybe it's 6 minutes or whatever it is, and if it's Sean Hannity, it's super positive but doesn't really tell you anything about what's actually going on. And if it's Rachel Maddow, it talks about the Nunes cow and makes Devin Nunes look foolish, which also doesn't help people understand what's going on.
Yeah, no, and it's like, obviously mainstream media was set up this way to not allow people to have these rational conversations in front of big audiences, because they would all ultimately end up, incriminating the, elites that are putting on the whole show to begin with. But yeah, and I will certainly look more into and keep an eye on what's going on with Nunes's lawsuit. But I to tie this back to my situation, I haven't made any plans in terms of seeking legal action, but in theory, there should be actual legitimate recourse for me to recover the intellectual property that has been taken away from me in terms of just deleting all of this publicly accessible information is book burning, basically.
Oh yeah.
And Martin Geddes, who writes a lot about QAnon, has also had his account. I mean, if you have any more big Medium writers that you know of, please let me know. But there's not that many big Medium writers because it's a hard platform to do well on as an independent writer, and they are silencing a lot of the good ones. And that is, we'll see if it stands up in court. But at the same time, like, I should get a legitimate answer from Medium's legal department if they have a legitimate reason why they took my entire blog offline right now. They should at least be able to explain that to me, because obviously, yes, I have an account that I accepted the terms and conditions to, but at the same time, to some extent, there is a right for me to have the intellectual property of the access on the platform. And obviously Medium is had gotten all of the benefits of the brand behind my writing the entire
you help
time.
build the platform, and then they just pull the rug out from under you. Yeah, there's a terms of service agreement that you enter into with them that's a contract between you and Medium.com. And see, this is the thing. This is what we need, is legislation to allow all these different platforms to be fairly utilized by the people that use them. This CDA 230 was written in 1996 about a case between Stratton, Oakmont, and I think Prodigy or CompuServe, basically a dial-up computer text bulletin board system that was such a niche thing. It wasn't like Twitter or Facebook or YouTube or Google, where virtually everyone who is living in a house with electricity is interfacing with these things, and they've got a real impact on things like elections. So it's become a much more important issue.
It has, and that's a really interesting little note you made, because I think that's what a lot of people are realizing about the conclusion of Robert Mueller's probe right now, is that there were, and this was allowed in many ways, but his probe obviously completely affected people's voting behavior in the midterm elections last year. And that's what people need to really start waking up to. This is kind of the thesis of my article. No amount of censorship can stop the Great Awakening, which I had been writing before, and now I've been censored, so it actually gives me a little bit even more to write about. Yeah. But there's, people, there should be, obviously access to shared platforms like this, and, every single step toward kind of decentralizing the control of big tech is going to help us. I kind of lost my train of thought there. I forget what I was saying.
Sorry. Well, I mean, the point is we all want access to these things, and, they are private companies, so there's a certain amount of leeway they have to make their own rules. But the point is, when you enter into a terms of service agreement with them, that's a contract, and they can't just change the rules on the fly. They should be forced, if they aren't, they should be forced to tell you, or I should say obligated to tell you, what it is that you've done that gets you taken off of the platform. And it would be nice if, I mean, it's not like you posted some, I'm not going to give an example, but some kind of egregious, violent content or something.
There's literally nothing that's new. And I would love for them to tell me, look, be like, oh, you put a swear word or something, it's like, at least tell me something, it's like, They just literally said the account associated with this email address has violated our trust and safety standards.
That's become the catch-all for them to just kick anybody off of whatever platform they want to kick them off of. And someone raised a very good point, Zach, that Devin Nunes has a bright career ahead of him and could even be a presidential nominee in 2024. So, we see all these little kind of pinprick attacks, Donald Trump and Nunes and everybody that they want to try to kind of knock out of the box. Zach, we're almost out of time for tonight. Was there anything else you wanted to cover before we wrap it up?
No, thanks for having me on and talking about this. Mm-hmm. All of my visits to your show have been very productive.
I agree.
They will all be chronicled in my book, so that is awesome. Mm-hmm. And, follow me on Twitter, folks. I'm almost at 30,000 Twitter followers, so that's going to be a nice milestone once I make that.
There you
I
go.
will have my book out hopefully soon, and I don't know where I'm going to be blogging, so hopefully I'll still be able to make a wave enough for you to notice me, and I can come on and give you an update at some point, maybe when the book comes out.
Yeah.
But, I love your audience. I appreciate the conversation, and, we're all in the very early stages of this now, but I really do think that this is kind of the future of media, where it's unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, like you said about CNN or these news shows, where it's like they give you 90 seconds of predetermined opinion about the current event that happened at the moment.
Yes.
Life is not that way. And yeah, it makes for more difficult TV to not be able to monitor exactly what you're saying. But these types of discussions, point and counterpoint, what have we seen, what's changed now, that's what you can't capture in writing. And that's why so much of this dialogue is super important. And it's going to be interesting to see what kind of alternative journalism, what the role it plays in going into 2020 is, obviously from a number of different angles. But thanks everyone who had, a lot of your audience has been on my audience as well, and I really appreciate all the support and thoughtfulness behind it. And I don't think I'll sue Medium, but I'm definitely going to ask and find a few people to make sure they tell me that it's not a good idea before I decide not to. Because there's 3 of us that just got our Medium accounts suspended: a Christian woman, a gay man, and another gay man. And so we actually have very interesting
Discrimination
ways of,
case.
It's complete discrimination. And it's really interesting too, and that's something that Medium obviously doesn't even want to touch, or any of these companies even want to touch, because it's like Martin Geddes and I both are kind of big like in the Q vein, and actually this other woman is also a kind of Q type person. We're all conservatives, so to speak, in terms of big media, but we are the types of groups that are getting discriminated against. And it's really interesting that Medium is just like, we're going to openly censor these gay guys, like 2 fairly prominent citizen journalists, also gay, completely silenced. And these are these companies that are constantly trying to like talk about how much they honor diversity and how much they want diversity of speech, and what do they actually do in practice.
Right.
Is like there's not a lot of gay people in the news media that not like my sexuality really matters, but at the same time, to the extent that you're silencing opinions, to the extent that you're silencing the opinions of marginalized groups, that adds another layer to what they're doing.
Well, and if you think about it, Zach, the real thing that I think marginalized you in 2019, and I don't know, this is just an outside opinion, but perhaps it's less the matter of being gay and more the matter of being a gay conservative.
Or just being conservative in general. And that's
right.
A great point. And I don't know at what point I'll have a chance to write about that.
I think they're fearful of articulate gay conservatives who, because look, let's face it, if it was like Ronald Reagan didn't have any gay Republicans hanging out with him because that was totally unacceptable then. But in 2019, I think conservatives are ready to accept. I mean, you're not coming on with like Desmond the whatever, and you know what I'm saying. When you make
absolutely.
Your sexuality not the central focus of your personality, I think that's become much more acceptable to people, and it's another one of these things that brings divided communities together. And that's what they don't want.
They don't want to see. That's exactly right. What an amazing thing to close on, because that really is the whole media's assault. It's not on one type of person. It is out there to divide us.
Yes.
In every way they can. They are trying to create differences between us and make people be angry about those and act on those.
Right.
When, in my opinion, the more you get to know more people, the more you're just like, oh my God, everybody's the goddamn same person. And it's like, I don't give a shit about being gay really at all. And it's just, the more people talk about these types of things to try and make us seem like we're different, the more it's just obvious that it's like, well, you only brought these identity politics into this for a certain reason, and it's to draw a line between 2 people. Yeah. And it's so weird because there's so many like nice concepts between respecting diversity and not being xenophobic, but at the same time, it's like totally the weaponization of concern trolling and just trying to basically, it's like the victim mentality of the Democrats being like, black people, you're the victim, vote for us. Gay people, you're the victim, vote for us. Everyone, you're a victim, vote for us. And, you know, people are starting to wake up to the fact that that's been the Democrats' way of doing things for a long time. It's like, oh, let's take the, you know, it's a way of controlling the opposition too, completely, 100%. It's a way of controlling the opposition by saying divide and conquer. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So, well, Zach, we'll definitely have you back on the show when the book comes out. And, you know, the last thing I want to say is on those short format mainstream news segments, they're definitely not going to have an open conversation, particularly about something like Facebook, if, let's say, Facebook is a sponsor of the show. And that's why it's so important that people go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and become sponsors of the show. We want to keep these kind of conversations going and have the diversity of guests that we've been having. I want to thank my friend Zach Haller for coming on the show. Zach, thank you so much. I screwed it up. Zach Haller. Damn it. I always
you practiced. You got it right on the whole time until now.
I'm sorry, man.
No, thanks for having me. And
great to have you.
You're really doing great work here, and thanks for sharing.
Thank you, Zach. And thanks, everybody, for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.